Hello there, Salim Omar here from the Straight Talk about Small Business Success podcast. I've got a special guest for us. His name is Roy Osing. He's a former president, CMO, and entrepreneur with over 40 years of successful and unmatched executive leadership in every aspect of business. As president of a major data and internet company's leadership and audacious, unheard of ways, took the company from its early stages to 1 billion, that's a B, in annual sales. He's a resolute blogger, keen content marketer, dedicated teacher, and mentor to young professionals. As an accomplished business advisor, he's the author of the no-nonsense book series, Be Different or Be Dead. He's devoted to inspiring leaders, entrepreneurs, and organizations to stand apart from the average, boring crowd and achieve their true potential. Roy, I am delighted to have you on the show. Thank you for taking me up on my invitation.
I'm absolutely delighted, Salim, and it's Osing, by the way. Just to clarify that with you and your listeners, I get all sorts of confusion over what I consider to be a pretty simple surname of 2 syllables, but I get everything. I get Osing, I get Oozing, and I keep saying, well, treat this as a musical experience. It's Osing, just like Osing a song. Having said that,
there you go.
I'm grateful to you to have me in front of your audiences, giving an opportunity to kind of share my experiences and what I've learned, and hopefully people can take away some of that, and it will help them too. So I'm grateful, Salim. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally resonate with, when I read your bio and, your book series, that the Be Different or Be Dead, I totally resonate with that, because in this crowded marketplace, it's so important to stand out. It's so important to be different. So what's your idea behind be different or be dead?
Yeah, so my story is a pretty interesting one. My background is in the telecom world. And if you go back a couple of decades, just as that business was coming out of a monopoly regulated area into a highly competitive world, I was confronted with the notion that was simply, we weren't ready as a business. We were practicing traditional things, we weren't competitive, etc. And so I started to think about breakaway things that we needed to do in order to actually survive the metamorphosis that we had to go through to be competitive. And so my whole journey around Be Different was driven by the need to survive as an organization at that time. Because if we couldn't survive, sure as heck, we couldn't perform well. And so I started to look at the world as a kind of like a juxtaposition of concepts, right? Where we went from treating mass markets to treating individuals, where we moved away from benchmarking to creation. So there's all these traditional business concepts that I basically fought against, and I continue to fight against today. And that's one of the reasons why I've described businesses as mediocre, which is kind of an interesting way to get a conversation going, is because we have so much traditional past practices and methods and so forth that we use that are quite frankly outdated. I discovered that we had to take a different journey. We had to break away. And it's interesting to me that people talk about businesses pivoting. I hate that word, Salim. I hate it because what it suggests is you pivot on a fulcrum. And I'm all about getting rid of the fulcrum and getting a new fulcrum with a completely different direction. And so I started realizing that breaking away to do things differently was necessarily very early in my career to survive. And then I learned that it was an incredible engine for growth. And so I've been spending my life up to now just trying to get people interested in coloring outside the lines, in creating, not copying best in class, benchmarking kind of thing, which goes on a lot. And my conclusion is organizations today, even though the world is much more competitive, are doing a less of a good job in terms of differentiating themselves from their competition. They really are. And if you read competitive claims out there, they're replete with words that I call claptrap expressions like better, we are the best, we're number one, we're the market leader. And come on, right? As a marketing guy, they mean nothing to customers out there. They're simply an aspirational communications of intent. And so I'm fighting really hard to get businesses to get clear on what makes them special, what makes them unique in the marketplace. And we can talk about that because I've created my own approach to do it.
Yeah. Now, what were some of the things that, you were the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer in the organization. What were some of the things that you did to make your marketing and sales teams remarkable?
Well, the first thing is I had to create as the president of this company. And the background of this is I was asked to take over and build a relatively young data and internet company. And we ended up doing that. And I get goosebumps every time I think about it. We did take it to $1 billion in annual sales. I was asked to take that challenge on. And one of the biggest problems we had was trying to figure out what our competitive advantage was. And so I had to create my own approach to this. And I call it the only statement. Okay. And it's a really simple concept and people seem to be quite excited about it. And it obviates the need to describe yourself in comparative or superlative terms like better and best and leader, which don't mean anything. The only statement goes like this: we are the only ones that, and you fill it in. We are not the better, not the best, the only ones, right? So the interesting thing about that, Salim, is you can, first of all, measure it because it's binary. It either exists or it doesn't exist. And you can test it to see if it's true or not. It's pretty simple, the clarity of it. And so basically, my role as president of this company was to not just deal with marketing and sales. This was a competitive advantage value proposition for the whole business within which marketing and sales worked. And so we worked on that. It ended up to be really quite successful because we were able to answer the question, why should we do business with you as opposed to your competitor? And small businesses need to think that through, okay? Because small businesses are falling subject and victim to the claptrap. Don't ever believe what you read. I mean, I'm looking at stuff. Here's an amazing technology company, right? That says, okay, our advantage is to bring the best user experience to its customers through innovative hardware, software, and services. We believe that we are in the face of the earth to make great products, and that's not changing. Help me understand how that should convince me to go with this company versus its competitor. It's not very helpful. Now, I'm not suggesting in this case, it's a very successful company, and I'm not suggesting that you can't be successful in other ways, but you need to start with coming up with a competitive claim that is clear and crisp and defines your uniqueness. And what I've discovered and had to create is the only statement really does that for you. It really does that for you. So that would be my first suggestion for businesses who are looking to grow. Are you clear on what makes you special? Or are you falling victim to the claptrap that's out there promulgated by experts in the field that, quite frankly, have never run $1 billion a year business? You've got to avoid that stuff. Best practices when it comes to competitive advantage claims are useless because none of them uses the only statement. That's it. So you got to use the only statement.
And what's the process like? I mean, you've got probably large teams of smart people. How do you tap into their genius and insights and bring it home where you're getting a collective, the collective wisdom of the room? What's your process as a leader?
So it's really quite simple. Okay, what I do, especially with clients, because I've done a lot of this since I've moved from the telecom world into my retirement world, which my wife never believes I will be retired, but that's another story. What I do is I get an executive team in the room, and literally in 2 days, we can build a strategy and an only statement. And the only process is really quite clear, okay? But it's within what I call a strategic game planning process, which I had to create myself, okay? But it starts out with saying, who are the customers that you've chosen to serve? Okay, you don't serve mass markets. You serve clusters of groups that have the latent potential to deliver you your growth goals. Once you've done that, the simple question is, what do they care about, Salim? What do those customers care about? Not what they need. It's not about needs. It's about what they care about, what they crave, what their secrets are, what they lust for, what they covet. Now, why would I talk that way? Well, because in marketing terms, if you can figure out what somebody craves, you typically have got an opportunity to premium price whatever the solution is, because nobody else is doing it. So marketing needs to get the hell out of needs satisfaction into cravings definition and providing value packages that solve craving problems. And so what I would do is say, there's our target group of customers. We define what they crave, and then we'd figure out, and it literally a scatter diagram. Okay, you can do this on a blackboard or a pad or whatever the hell you got, and you put the cravings all over there. And then what you say is, okay, where do we play as an organization? Cravings number one, number two, number three. We draw a circle around that, and then we start to build our only statement around that. Once we have the only statement drafted, then we test it. Is it true? And do we consistently deliver it? And you have to test it, because the result of the testing process could be that, whoops, it's not true, or the customers don't care about it. So, wow, you don't want to be the only one providing something that your customers don't care about, right? That is not a good place to be. So you test it and then refine it, and then you go to market with it. Now, the thing is, the only statement, and again, it's in my books, okay? 7 books, they all talk about the only statement in various ways. It's always a draft. Why do I say that? It's because the world is always changing. And to actually believe that it's permanent is to be fooling yourself. So you always need to be nimble, treat it as a draft, always be prepared to modify it, okay? And this is what marketing and sales and organizations need to learn. Declare what you're special at, get to market with it, and be prepared to revise it on the run. That's the process that works in the real world today.
Yeah, amazing. Good stuff. Now, you use the word audacious. It's, I believe, a word in one of the titles of your book. What does audacious mean to you? And, what is this quality that you're looking for, or you're helping entrepreneurs develop in themselves? The word audacious.
Yeah, I mean, Audacious is actually the subtitle of my latest book, by the way, which is going to hit bookstores and online in print version on the 31st, man. So we are 1 week away from launch date, and I'm super pumped and super excited. Be different or be dead. The audacious, unheard of ways I took a startup to $1 billion in sales. Audacious, upon reflection, is a perfect word for me. It describes who I am, how I think, how I behave. And it's interesting because I've been writing about this since 2009, Salim. So for me, this has been a journey. So I'm 13 years in, and the material is still ripe. It's still fresh, and it's even more relevant today. What do I mean by audacious? I mean the willingness and propensity to be bold, to step out of the herd, get away from the crowds, do something that's risky, do a lot of failing. As long as you learn from the first mistake, then you can make another one. But you can't repeat the same mistake twice, because that suggests to me that you didn't learn from the first one. And so it's all about getting away from the pedantics of the way things are typically done in business and organizations and careers, for that matter. Okay, it's having the guts, the emotional fortitude, the pain tolerance to get out and do something special. It's throwing away benchmarking. Now, let me just stop there for a minute, because I want to say this to your listeners. There may be certain things operationally that you can benchmark. The problem is the world benchmarks everything, right? And some people actually copy a company under the guise of innovation and use it as a strategy. Now, first of all, it's a deadly thing to do, because all you're doing is replicating sameness. Who would want to be the same? How can you possibly have an advantage if you're the same as somebody else? But the other thing is, it's intellectually dishonest, Salim. to say that you're being innovative when you copy. So please, I compel you, stop copying people. It's the wrong thing to do. It's the wrong thing to do. I mean, innovating is hard. Copying is easy. Okay. And one of the things, I wrote an article 10 years ago on why marketing is a boring bust. And if you go onto my blog at bedifferentorbedead.com, you will find that article. And I also wrote an update about a couple of months ago saying, where is marketing 10 years after? And the reality is, when it comes to things like copying and benchmarking and figuring out what best practices are, marketing has not progressed. Now, they will say to you that there's other things that they've done. Yes, we now have got artificial intelligence tactics being employed in the business. Okay, but the broad brush things that marketing need to do to serve customers, we're still copying AI, by the way. I mean, so we got a whole herd of AI users out there, which blows me away, because I still don't understand how people think they can be special when everybody's copying everybody else. So that's one of my main messages. You marketers, stop doing that stuff. Get creative. Get the heck out. Start coloring out of the lines. Be bold. Be audacious. Be prepared to fail. Please, it's important that you do that.
What's one thing the listeners can do today to be more audacious and to be more innovative?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the planning process that I created, which applies so well to small businesses. It applies to basically every kind of business. Because I had a horrible time when I was asked to run this, develop this data business. I had a heck of a time trying to put together a strategy. And it's completely different. And anybody can do it, right? And don't tell me you don't have the time to do it. You can do it because it's that simple. It has 3 questions. The first one is, how big do you want to be? And this is all in my books, okay? So I'm going to whip through it, but go and see the strategic game planning process in my books. First question, how big do you want to be? It's a question about growth. How much top line revenue do you want in 24 months? Because 5-year plans don't exist, okay? They don't. The 4th year never shows up. Second question is, who do you want to serve? We touched on this a bit earlier. Where are you going to get the money? You want to choose customer groups that have the latent potential to generate the revenue under your how big. And the third question is, how you're going to compete and win. That's the source of the only statement. We're going to compete and win by being the only one that. So what I would say to you, our listeners who want to be creative, who want to innovative, sit down with your team or by yourself. Solopreneurs can do this and address the strategic game plan for your business. It will force you to be creative, because you have to be audacious in terms of your growth goals. I mean, if you don't insert an audacious growth goal, you don't have any incentive to be creative, right? If you know how to achieve something, Salim, you have no motivation to be creative. So I'm a believer in the statement, I don't know, is the primary driver of the innovative and creative process. Has to be. And yet, if you look at standard traditional pedantic strategy building processes, they don't include that. They say, well, how are we going to achieve this? Let's figure it out. Well, the reality is you start out with something you don't know how to achieve, and the strategy building process achieves it. So I would say to your listeners, try and do that and focus on the only statement. The only statement will be the source of innovation and creativity and growth for your business. No question about it. How do I know? Because I used it and I grew a startup to $1 billion in sales. That's how I know.
That's amazing. Good stuff, man. So much wisdom, Roy, that you have shared with us. And I'm looking at my clock, and we're getting close towards the end of this episode. I want to ask you a couple of questions. One's how can listeners reach out to you? But before we go there, share with us some final words of wisdom, or perhaps a question that I didn't ask you that you feel we should really get in this episode.
No, I think you've done a great job in the time we have available. What I would say to people is that it is time. It is time to break away from the common approach that people use to running organizations. It's time to break away from copying. It's time to break away from textbook theoretical approaches to running a business. It's time to move to the practical things. It's time to move to a leadership model where it's based on lighting fires in people. Okay, that's our job. Why? Because when we light fires in people, they execute for us. And results come from execution. They don't come from what's in your head. I'm sorry, I can take a mediocre plan and execute it pristinely and beat your pants off, right? If you have a pristine plan that you can't execute. Okay, so it's time, guys. So what I want you to do, please dive into my stuff. Find a nugget, find something that is different, that lights your fire, and do it. I'm here for you. I'm here at roy.osing@gmail.com. I spend most of my days having conversations with people around my stuff. Roy, here's a draft only statement. What do you think? Roy, what do you mean by cravings? How can I address cravings from a marketing point of view? Roy, how does marketing and sales work better together? And so I'm happy to do that, Salim, but besides simply participating with you in this. And I'm happy that I'm sensing more energy. And by the way, this is worldwide, right? Like you're in Thailand, I'm in Vancouver. I've dealt with people in Australia and around the world on this stuff. I want to change the conversation to be different, not be same. Let's start that now. I want to do that with you, please.
Awesome. Good stuff. It's more fun. It's let's be audacious. And Roy, it seems like you've created so much content and there's so much wisdom in everything that you shared today, but there's so much content that you've got. So I highly encourage listeners to go check you out, get your books, because a lot of good ideas, it's taken you a lifetime, 40 years, 4 decades to pull everything together, to get this all together. And it's in a book, or it's in a course, or it's in a podcast. Yeah. And it's really for listeners to kind of get on that journey and to uncover some of that stuff that you've shared in your resources. So good stuff. This was so good. Appreciate it, Roy. Thank you so much.
I would just say in departing, please visit me. Come visit me at bedifferentorbedead.com. I've tried to create a resource portal for people to come and see my stuff. I blog every Monday, Celine, on Be Different or Be Dead. So there's blogs going in there back to 2009, my friend. So I've been around doing this a long time. There's a page that outlines all my books, including my latest one, which again, boom, May the 31st is going to be online for you to purchase and have it sent to you. So I've got all sorts of links. There's a page on thoughtful remarks that give people an idea of how people feel about my content. And I've got all my podcasts that I've done in there if you wanted to listen to a few and hear the same stuff different ways, because you hosts are great. You come at material differently. And that's a challenge for me, because it's a good thing to talk about it in different ways. And email me, roy.osing@gmail.com. Ask the question. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Roy. I really appreciate your time.
Very, very welcome, Salim. And again, I'm grateful to have the opportunity. Thank you.